Hi everyone, Hare Krishna. My name is Asha Jyoti. I wanted to share this presentation with you all amid our current events. This is a very trying time, a scary time for most, if not all of us, in varying degrees and capacities. Right now, there are a lot of questions, and the answers to those questions often get muddied with misinformation and too many hands in the pot. So I wanted to offer this presentation, Faith in Times of Fear, from the perspective of the timeless wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and to be able to build upon our spiritual awareness so that when we address these very fearful moments and times in our lives, that we can do it from a position that is very balanced and with spiritual acuity. So a little bit about me. I would personally like to skip through this slide, but just to kind of give you from where I'm coming from. I was born and raised in Krishna consciousness, initiated by my spiritual masters who are bona fide teachers in the line of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhakti Vigyan Srila Bharati Goswami Maharaj. I'm also a physical therapist. I got my health coaching certification earlier this year and have been implementing teachings from that, as well as I'm also certified in LSVT BIG, which is this Lee Silverman vocal training. It's most specific to Parkinson's patients. However, it extends to many other neurological conditions. And I'm also currently working on my certificate in lifestyle medicine and pre- and postnatal coaching. So first, to be able to understand our current event with the pandemic, we have to really understand what the nature of the material world is and why these things occur. First, we understand that the world is real, but it's temporary, that everything in this world is temporary, and thus we undergo fear and anxiety from the perspective of losing something that we once had, as opposed to thinking that we're substituting lower consciousness for higher consciousness or lower vibrations for higher vibrations. That this world is also a perverted reflection. In one sense, it means backwards. In another sense, it means exploitative. As the reflection, it's akin to looking in a lake in the valley of the mountain and then thinking that you are seeing the actual mountain as opposed to the reflection. Material happiness is also very flickering. In the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about it being flickering like a candle. That in Vedic literature, it talks about one doesn't necessarily have to endeavor for happiness, and similarly, distress also comes without endeavoring for it. So the pursuit of material happiness can be compared to a dog chasing its own tail. That if we see happiness like a dog's head and the distress like the tail, then we know that as soon as we see the dog's head, the tail is just around the corner. So in the same way, just as we are happy in one moment, we know that distress will automatically follow. It's just the natural course of things. That this particular world is no place for a gentleman or gentlewoman. That the laws of karma are really the principle that keeps us grounded and accountable for our actions, whether they are good, bad, or somewhere in between. It plants the seed for those respective reactions which are equal and opposite. That padam padam ya vipadam, that there's danger at every step of life. And this we see in the rest of the world. I don't know if anybody watches this show on MTV, Ridiculousness, but you often see people who are in a pretty beat up position. They go through so many different things, almost being hit by a car or a truck or whatever, but somehow they survive because it wasn't their time. But there really is danger at every step of life. that this world is also filled with suffering, such as birth, old age, disease, and death, that this is a natural course in our lives, and that this suffering is not just caused by these particular facets, that it's also caused by miseries stemming from our own mind and body, from other living beings, and also from natural catastrophes that are beyond our control, and that's adhyatmic, adhibautic, and adhidaivic. So this current situation that we're in, this pandemic, it seems to be arising from a combination of all three of these, not just one. That to really understand that the suffering that we're going through, or that we perceive that we're going through, is not actually suffering that we ourselves, as our true self, are experiencing. That it's suffering that we're experiencing through the gross body. That's what we see when we are looking in the mirror, is our gross body. It's considered the material body, or otherwise known as, and it's just made of matter, just water, air, ether, pus, urine, stool, whatever you want to consider it, it's considered the material body. That in the Bhagavad Gita 2.22, Vashamsi Janani Yatha Vihaya Navani Gurnati Naro Parani Tatha Sharirani Vihaya Janani Anyani Samyati Navani Dehi. The translation is, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones. Similarly, the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So this is akin to reincarnation. That just as we take off our winter coat and we're putting on our spring jacket, and maybe the old jacket is torn or, useless now. And so we donate it or we put it in the trash. That now we've taken on a new particular coat or jacket. In the same way, our bodies also go through this cycle. And this is exactly what reincarnation is. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Inside Out. I personally really enjoy that movie. It's really good. It does highlight a lot of things, but I just encourage you guys to watch it. This is one of the characters in there, Fear. So understanding fear from what it means in terms of the Bhagavad Gita, we have two verses, Bhagavad Gita 4.10 and also Bhagavad Gita 18.30. So Vitarag Bhaya Krodh Manmaya Mam Upashyatah Bhavo Jnana Tapasaha Uttamad Bhavam Agataha. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, many persons in the past become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attain transcendental love for me. And pravittam cha nirvittam cha karya karye bhaya bhaye bandham moksham chaya veti buddhi sa partha satviki. O son of Pritha, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, what is binding and what is liberating, is in the mode of goodness. By understanding these verses, we can understand what it is we need to give up and what it is that we need to attain. And there are certain things that are meant for us to give up that are favorable for giving up, and that are also unfavorable for giving up, or that are favorable to achieve and unfavorable to achieve. So we see this from a mode of goodness in comparison of these three gunas, that within the mode of goodness, truth interprets our experience. And so you can see that here, that those particular individuals who express themselves in Rajagun mostly, desire interprets their experience, and those who express themselves in Tamagun mostly, fear interprets their experience. So ideally, this centerpiece is where we want to be. And that helps and is the most favorable for a spiritual advancement and spiritual acuity, to be able to see the pandemic as being in a worldly view or in a global view, or just from a spiritual perspective, that these things are happening, that they're meant to happen, that they're meant to happen to balance ourselves, others, as well as the entire world. This brings me to the next aspect of the balance, which is being equipoised. Being equipoised in distressing times, we see in Bhagavad Gita 2:14, Matra sparshas tu konteya sitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payino nityas tam titikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata. And one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So just as we're going through kind of the cycle, just within an hour actually, I'm looking out the window and it was pouring and now it's bright and sunny blue skies. So we can sort of learn about ourselves and learn in this particular time what we should really be focused on, being present in the moment, and not being disturbed by the various goings-on of everything happening externally to us, because all of that will be going on regardless. It is really our reaction. It is our responsibility it is our ability to respond. The meaning of responsibility, the ability to respond in a way that is effective and is a way that is efficient for our spiritual growth. So fear is, from the vantage point of chronic pain, that it's similar to pain. We see this chronic pain cycle, and again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. You guys can kind of read it on here, but we see when people have pain, then they're anxious that something's wrong with them, that there's some type of tissue damage, and therefore the brain becomes very centralized on that particular point and problem. The changes then occur in the nervous system, then creates more pain. So therefore, if you start to provoke that patient's symptoms or provoke that person's pain, it leads to further anxiety, further fear. They don't want to move, and then that creates a whole cycle, and it's a vicious cycle. So in the same way, we see that fear increases angst, which then increases cortisol in the body. That increases stress and inflammation, and that leads to immunosuppression, which is the opposite of what we want right now. We want to build our immunity, and building our immunity means that we should try to temper our fear with other activities. So this was something really cool that I saw. I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but it's asking the question, who do I want to be during COVID-19? It has the fear zone. It has things that we can't really control, except we're really, really worried in that first initial circle. The next circle is really the learning thing. We're trying to understand what our emotions are, what we can start to give up in terms of our control. And then from there, we move on into the growth zone. And in that perspective is when we can really start to be vulnerable, when we can really start to see things as they are and see what is actually in our control and what type of reaction we should try to have to this. And so this also is another way to really develop our not just material wellness, but also spiritually, our spiritual acuity and awareness as well. So practical ways to temper fear. 1, coming from my perspective, reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Listening to and singing kirtans. I personally love singing various melodies of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The mantra goes Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Utilizing positive think. When we have negative thoughts, that we should try to stop those thoughts, and we should try to think in the alternative, that what can I actually learn from this experience? Developing a self-care package. I always encourage patients to do this. Being healthily optimistic, not being in a state of doom. Seeing this as a blessing in disguise. Sharing love and gratitude with one another, as well as staying safe and staying healthy. I want to encourage all of you to try to utilize some of these things as well as others, whatever you guys may personally do and know, that you have been able to grow and learn through this process. I think that this is such an important time for all of us, even if it is seemingly scary, but it's such a moment and a time where we can really center ourselves and grow, especially spiritually. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.